Hey my 3D printing YouTube family, this is Mark with Upgrades Complete, and today we are going to be taking on everything there is to know about silk metallics as well as all my Cura settings. Stay tuned. Hey my YouTube 3D printing family, this is Mark with Upgrades Complete, and I wanted to talk a little bit about silks. Now, if you've been following me, you know I've been doing a lot of silk printing lately, and that's mostly because of the just incredible quality that you can get with just an FDM printer and really well dialed in settings. In fact, my Ender 3 V2 has been designated a silk metallic printer for now on, so I'm one printer down there, but it does an amazing job. Now, the reason I've gotten into the larger prints with silks is twofold. One, you can't deny that the finish that you get is gorgeous right off the plate. The reason I've gone with silks like this is twofold. One, it's just so clean. There's no layer lines. The shine is incredible, but cleanup is simple because your supports are going to fall right off. And I don't need to sand, I don't need to primer, I don't need to paint any of these. Taking tips from the automotive industry, all you really have to do is maybe compounds in some of the rougher areas, but otherwise just buffing these parts out is going to give you a finish that side by side with real metal will be indistinguishable. You're going to have museum quality pieces off your printer and done, completed within hours, as opposed to days or weeks, as we know when we're going for perfection it can take. Now, a piece like this, like Sylvie's Crown, I want this as museum quality. I can do this in about 30 minutes of buffing and it'll be flawless, completely flawless. The hammer, the handle for Mjolnir will require a little bit of sanding, and when I say sanding, more of a compound material, because what you have on the inside of these prints was printed at the same temperature as the outside, so you have the same shine throughout. You just have to know how to bring it out with buffing. And silks really lend themselves to angles and bending. Yes, they are slightly more fragile than a normal PLA, but if you select your prints properly, you can use them for pieces, and you can use them for certain items. Others I wouldn't recommend silks for, but things like this, the mechanism for to open and close the eye, is something that I would do in an industrial PLA and just paint it, because it's a mechanism on the inside. Now, I know I've been getting hit a lot about my settings, and I have to be honest, my settings came from YouTube. I'm sorry, TikTok. I asked the question and I combined everybody's answers and created a profile for silks. And here it is in Cura. Layer height, I follow Chap's rule of 8, 0.8, 0.16, 24, 32, and so forth. Walls, I always do 3, regardless. I always do 3 because that gives you a little extra meat for sanding off any blemishes that might happen, compounding, things like that. Top and bottom, make sure you have a skin layer on there as it smooths everything out. Infill, you're looking at whatever you decide, really, depending upon your print, but try and stay within the gyroid pattern, as it does add a lot of extra strength to any material, but especially silk. I print my metallics, and this is going to vary per machine, but I print like this copper silk from CC3D at 210, and that gives me the finish that I want. Use a temp tower to figure out exactly where your filament is happy at color wise. Speed is the biggest factor. Larger parts you can run at around 50 max, but your initial layers, always start your initial layers around 10. Support roof speed around 25, which is going to be half of your actual print speed. Smaller, more intricate parts, I will take that down to 30. Travel, we're going to be talking about retraction. Retraction settings, I find 5 is fine. You're going to get squeaking regardless, but when you look at your machine, and if you come around to your ender or whatever you're printing on, you're going to notice some buildup of print material. Over time, after a half dozen prints, you'll start noticing it. Blow it off, re-grease your Z-seam, your Z-screw, and you're going to need to change your tips a little more often. I'm still actually on my original tip, surprisingly. And back in the settings, we have a retraction. Now, I always leave combing mode on all, and Z-hop when retracted, because once again, silk is fragile, more fragile than PLA, so it can break off relatively easily. Cooling, I haven't had to deal with. I've just left it pretty much stock. Supports, it really doesn't matter what you do. 65% for the Ender 3v2, it can handle that no problem. And supports break free so easily and clean up so easily that don't be afraid to use them. But build plate adhesion, rafts, you have to use rafts with silk. Not only will it give you a smooth surface for it to build on, but that surface, it really needs something to adhere to, especially when you're printing off something like this. When you get into something like this that has multiple sections, you need to adhere those sections to something, and even a smooth glass bed is not going to handle it. Now, some things that you can't see in print settings is dialing your machine in. You really have to use those settings, dial in your machine perfectly, and then what I finally found out was the trick, and it was suggested to me on TikTok, was to raise my bed up. And for me, the magic number was about a quarter turn on each knob. Raised my bed up, closing the distance between my nozzle and my build surface, which gave me perfect adhesion. And that's not easy on silks to get all the time. But when it comes down to layers, this is smooth as could be. And buffing, like, you can see the actual line a little bit, but you can't feel it even with a nail, nothing. I tested a piece of this with primer alongside of a black piece that printed in PLA. I could see all the layer lines in the black PLA. I couldn't find any visible ones on this. So that lets me know that buffing will do the job. So I hope this helps getting you started in silks. I'm going to be talking about why I use Eastman butts to dial things in next. So stay tuned for that video, and I hope you enjoyed this and got some use out of it. Thanks, guys, and appreciate your viewership. Like and subscribe.